Many people, including many religious people, think that faith and reason contradict one another. But the Catholic Church has always taught that just the opposite is true. That in fact, there's a profound harmony between faith and reason, and that includes between faith and science as well. That's what we're going to be talking about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into today's topic, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have any ideas for future episodes that you'd like us to discuss, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I am joined in studio once again, as not always, but often lately, Renae Kranz. Hi, Renae.
Hello, Chris.
Who are you, Renae? In case somebody's listening for the first time ever, and they're wondering, they somehow figured out who I am, but now they're wondering who you are.
Yeah, no kidding. You never say who you are
That's
anymore.
true. I don't. Did you notice that? I don't want to give out my security code information, so I don't talk.
He's just this mysterious Dr. Bergwald.
Mysterious Dr. Bergwald.
I am Renae Kranz. I am the interim communications director for the diocese and the editor of the Bishop's Bulletin. Married to Ryan Kranz for 18 years. Native of South Dakota, grew up in the Watertown area.
What city were you born in?
Watertown.
What was your first pet's name? What's going on? Renae used to have a habit of telling interesting details about herself. Then she realized, I think I'm giving away all my security. Not really, literally.
But I might start if I'm not careful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So she's. I think I can. This is serious. I thought about maybe I would tee up something for you. So it's not serious. Like, here we go, Renae.
Okay.
Favorite book, movie, or TV show?
My favorite book growing up and everything as a kid was always Where the
Bible.
Where the Red Fern Grows was like my
Not the Bible?
favorite book when I was a kid.
Okay.
Is the Bible your favorite book? Like for casual reading?
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about regular reading.
I'm kidding, yes. Where the Red Fern Grows, okay.
Yeah, I always loved that book. What was it?
Movie or TV or book? TV show.
Movie is a movie probably no one's ever heard of. It's Still Breathing.
You are right.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever heard of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Never heard of it.
Okay.
It's a girl movie.
I'm going to look it up
For
on
sure.
IMDb when we're done.
Yeah. You'll be like, what?
Okay. that segment was a bust. Moving on to...
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding. So you and I talked, and what I told you I wanted to do is discuss something that you would actually be interested in for once on Ignition, unlike all the other topics.
I have
where
never
you're just
been
like,
interested
this is
in
so
anything we've talked
boring.
about so
Why am I on this? No. But something that we talked about some ideas, and I did ask you, as I often do, but I wanted to make a particular point of hey, what would you be interested in? This is actually one that I proposed that you were like, yes, let's do that. Yeah. So before we get into sort of the content, I'm curious why you, and this might help us actually get into the content. Why were you, when I proposed this topic, why were you a pretty quick, let's do that?
I listen to Catholic Answers Live quite a bit. And I always love the episodes where they have atheists call in.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of this kind of conversation. It is faith versus reason and faith versus science and so on. And I'm always kind of like sometimes yelling at the radio in my car because I'm in my car.
I can't imagine that.
So yeah, it's something that kind of gets me riled up a little bit. And
what do you know why?
Because to me, it's so obvious that faith and reason and faith and science like work together. And it drives me crazy that these seemingly very smart people, and I'm sure they are, but for some reason can't see the two together. And I don't understand. I have a hard time understanding why that happens, but I guess their hearts haven't been fully opened yet. I don't know.
I was actually the question I wrote down, but you just kind of answered. Well, you responded to it already. It was going to. Why do you think that? I mean, in this case, atheists, but it's not always atheists. But why do you think they see a contradiction? But you just.
Well, I think our culture doesn't help because it kind of feeds into it. There's a lot of that kind of idea and thought out there that the Catholic Church doesn't believe in science and religion is. I think what happens is, and I'm going to probably get way far ahead of ourselves. But I think what happens is sometimes there are some religious sects or whatever that are very literal with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can't possibly mesh with science.
Right.
So I think there's some confusion there about what the Catholic Church teaches for real.
Yeah, and that's actually that is a great segue. I think one of the first important distinctions. So many discussions around, well, not just theology, frankly, anything, like where you're having a real conversation. One reason why they don't really ever seem to go anywhere is because people are using terms. Mm-hmm. We're having a conversation, but we might be using the same words, mm-hmm. but they mean sometimes slightly, sometimes significantly different things.
Yep.
And so making distinctions is actually a really important part mm-hmm. of having a fruitful conversation, frankly, even a fruitful argument.
Yeah, I've actually started doing that. Like if I start to have a conversation, an important one with someone, if there are some terms that I'm like, I'm not sure if we mean the same thing, I try to make both of us define that. Which seems a little cumbersome, but it really isn't.
No,
it really helps.
It really does help. So I think one concrete
First
way to
step,
do this.
Yeah.
When you say, what do you mean by that? Because we're using the same word here, but I'm wondering if maybe we're using it a little bit differently.
Right.
So yeah, it's a great point to clarify. So the first distinction I think that was important to make is, what do we mean by religion? Mm-hmm. Because there would be, and religion in a broad sense. So the theologian in me is going to come up, the precision here.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people talk about there's the Catholic religion and the Methodist religion and the Jewish religion and the Baptist religion. The Catholic perspective, what the Catholic Church, she would articulate the difference is actually Christianity is the religion.
Right.
Judaism is a religion, mm-hmm. Islam is a religion, et cetera. And then you have I think in a broader sense, philosophies and ways of life.
Sure.
So actually atheism could be considered a philosophy and a way of life. Atheists wouldn't call themselves religious, but in fact, in this broad sense,
it is a religion.
They have a philosophy and a way of life.
Yeah.
So because not every so Buddhism would be considered religion, but there's not necessarily a God that's worshipped.
Right.
So some of those common things that people think, to be religious means that you worship some divine being. Not even the traditional religions. Yep. That's actually not necessarily the case. So to make that, and then within Christianity, of course, the way that the church speaks is there are different traditions.
Right.
And we've talked in a recent episode about how the Catholic Church understands herself by God's grace and gift to be the fullness of truth and means of salvation. The church established by Jesus Christ, but she recognizes the many truths and means of salvation that are present in other Christian traditions.
Right.
So I get nitpicky when people talk about other churches. I'm like, well, the way that anyway. So in that sense, religion, is there a contradiction between faith or between reason and religion, between faith and reason? Well, it depends which religion you're talking about. And then even within,
there probably might be.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And even within Christianity,
mm-hmm.
the different traditions, there are definitely some Christian traditions that would sort of very proudly say, and not the main ones, but I've seen this proudly say that no, the Bible is what defines me. We're against reason,
science,
against reason or science.
Right.
Martin Luther, and Lutheranism is not one of these, but Luther was prone to make really outlandish statements that I think he himself and certainly other Lutherans probably like facepalm kind of thing. Luther talked about the whore of reason at one point. Now he was attacking people who were too rationalistic in their Christianity. So I understand, but that's a little too far, buddy. So there are some Christians who would sort of defiantly say, I cling to my faith even if reason or science contradict it.
Right.
So I'm not here to speak on behalf of other religions. Mm-hmm. Or other Christians.
Right.
Our conversation is so the topic is faith and reason, but we're talking specifically about the Catholic faith, Catholicism, the Catholic Church, and reason.
Right. I think that's a good distinction, right?
It's an important
front.
distinction, right? So your passion, because I've been talking I just went on and on and on there, Renae. You didn't stop me. You always interrupt me at some point along the way.
Not on here.
No,
in real life, yes.
Real life. So there is, as I said at the top, the Catholic Church teaches there is no contradiction between faith and reason.
Right.
So when you've known that for a long time, we've talked. You're a cradle Catholic, as am I. You, unlike me, never really fell away from the faith. Have you always known that to be true, or was there ever a time in your life where you just sort of, because it is kind of in the cultural air that there's a contradiction between faith and reason, Christianity and science? Were you always kind of aware that actually that's not how the Catholic Church understands it, or did you have that sort of erroneous view and come to a correct understanding later?
I don't know if I really had an erroneous view. I probably just didn't pay that much attention to it for a while. I would say it was more in my college years and so on when you kind of come to realize that, okay, there's things that other people are saying about your faith that now you have to reconcile.
Right.
So you maybe spend a little time doing that in whatever way. But I took a religion course in college, and of course, you're learning about all these different things, and you start to see kind of in the book they're talking about Catholicism in a way you're like, that's not exactly accurate.
Right.
And that's when things start to you're like, okay, I need to understand more. And so that was kind of the beginnings, and much more happened more towards when the new translation came out for me
of the Mass.
Yeah. And when my younger brother...
That was almost 10 years ago. Do you realize that?
And it seems a lot
11.
longer ago to me. But that was really kind of a big turning point for me as an adult, which is really weird. And about that time or a little after that was when my younger brother was thinking about leaving the church. And that was also a big kind of turning point. And you start to look at some of these things. You start to listen to things like Catholic Answers Live, and it starts to help you understand why that reason actually you can reason your way into the church in a way.
Right.
Not fully. You still have to let God work on your heart, but reason can actually bring you to God.
Right. And that's happened throughout the centuries.
Yes.
I mean, there have been brilliant men and women who...
Augustine?
Say it,
or not fully, not completely.
His mom was kind of him. His was a little bit more of... the reason was definitely part of it.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most brilliant saints, theologians in history. I'm thinking more specific. Oh boy, I lost his name. There have definitely been a lot of brilliant people.
Yes.
He won a Nobel Prize for medicine. He was a doctor, and he actually had a conversion that was prompted by, he witnessed a miracle at Lourdes that was medically inexplicable.
I don't know his name.
Shoot, I can't remember his name right now.
You'll think of it before we're done.
Hopefully.
And then you'll just yell it out, and it'll be awesome.
That'll be great radio podcasting.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely been, and that was part of so I mentioned, and longtime listeners know that I fell away from my faith and just didn't practice anything in college. And when I came back, do you remember my favorite question, Renae? What my favorite question is?
So what?
That's my second favorite question.
Why?
Yes. Yeah, you hear the so what from me more
yes,
often.
Yes, I do.
So what, Renae? The why is my favorite question. And it wasn't a purely intellectual reversion to Catholicism, but it was heavily an intellectual conversion or reversion to Catholicism.
Yeah. And I think that happens for some people, and that's okay as long as you get both parts involved at some point.
Exactly. Right. So for me, and then this is what the church would say. So the faith is necessary for sure as a gift from God, and then a gift that we sort of exercise. So faith is sort of like an exercise bike.
You're going to make me not like, dude, I don't like to exercise. Please don't make me not like.
Well, I'm sorry.
Don't equate things I love
Renae,
with exercise.
Faith is like a dumbbell. Okay, you like that better? No. Dumbbell? Let's go with the stationary bike. No, it's not like.
Okay.
No.
Exercise.
Actually, no. We'll go cake. It's still Easter. I'm sure there's still a lot of candy at the Kranz house. Faith is like a cake. God gives it to you, but you still have to put it in your mouth.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah, the exercise thing was.
Exercise is probably better.
You have to exercise.
You have to do it.
You have to do it, right?
Yes.
He gives us this gift, and then we have to use the gift. We have to do it, if you will. So faith is definitely necessary to fully embrace our faith. But at the same time, the role of reason can clear away misunderstanding. So,
right.
Yeah, the guy is on Catholic Answers Live. And frankly, the apostle of Catholic Answers, they do a fantastic job of that, of helping people who oftentimes have misunderstandings. Right. Clear up the misunderstanding. So it's sort of like between me and a fuller embrace of the Catholic faith, and whether I'm Catholic or not, a full embrace of there's all sorts of obstacles. Right. Some of them are maybe spiritual obstacles. Some of them are maybe emotional obstacles, wounds from my past or whatever. But some of them are intellectual obstacles. Yes. And what our reason can do is clear away those intellectual obstacles that are keeping me away from fully embracing our faith. You and I have talked before. I mean, so we can ask why. The church tells us to ask why, not in a whiny teenage way, but more of the 3 or 4 year old way. Like, what? But why? Why? To ask that why incessantly, like maybe when we were young. Don't be afraid to ask. Now, maybe our priest is going to get tired, just like our parents were like, oh, for you again. Maybe Dr. Bergwald will, but there's always, but the Lord will never tire of us truly inquiring. Yeah. And asking why.
And I think that's why for me, when the new translation happened, that like sparked, okay, why are these things being changed? And so then that kind of helped me learn some things I didn't know that cleared away obstacles that maybe I didn't know were really there.
Right, exactly. If you're just tuning in, by the way, you're listening to Ignition. This is a broadcast for the New Evangelization. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, visiting today with Renae Kranz about the great, actually, compatibility, not contradiction, between faith, Catholic faith, and reason, including Catholic faith and science. So oftentimes, Renae, the way that people will, and because you might be listening to this, but you could also watch it on the intertubes.
The YouTubes.
The YouTubes. The Venn diagram, Renae, I'll hold this up for you to see. Okay. The Venn diagram. Okay. So people may even watching, but you can get the idea. 2 circles that overlap. One has F for faith, the other R for reason.
Okay.
So there are things that we in our lives. There are things that we know is true because our reason tells us. So I know right now that you're wearing a gray jacket because my senses tell me, my reason, so on. So I know that that's true. I know 2 + 2 is 4 because my reason tells me so. There are other things so reason alone, if you will. There are things that we know are true because God has revealed them to us. We know them by faith. We trust in Him and His revelation. Like
the Trinity?
Like God is Trinity.
Okay.
Right? So we can't
reason our way to that.
We can't reason our way to that. He had to reveal it. But there is the great overlap in the middle. So there are many truths that we can arrive at. We know they're true because God has revealed them, but you can also know by reason alone. So, for instance, the classic example of this is God's existence.
Right.
It's possible. I mean, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, ancient, like non-Christian, pre-Christian philosophers knew that there was an uncaused cause, the first mover, etc. So we can know through reason that God exists, but then God has also revealed Himself to us. Right. So there are a lot of things in the overlap, and that's part of where the compatibility is. But even the things that we know by faith alone don't require us to abandon reason to embrace. Like the idea that God is 3 persons in one nature does not say, well, you really have to, it's irrational. You have to sort of check your mind at the door to accept. No. Right. I would never know it by reason alone. I couldn't get some philosophical, there's no philosophical argument that would get me there.
Right.
I know it because God has revealed it, but it's supra-rational.
Okay.
It's beyond my reason. It's not irrational. It's not in contradiction between my reason. Even the truths that we know by faith alone, like that, they're all supra-rational. They're not irrational. What that means is there's no rational argument against anything we believe as Catholics.
Right.
There are there are attempts to make rational arguments
that sound rational.
Right. But so we as Catholics can have confidence. And if you're not Catholic, you're listening to this, you too, frankly, can have confidence that what the church believes, there's no valid argument based on reason against anything the Catholic Church believes.
Right.
We don't require ourselves, again, to check our brains at the door of the church, so to speak.
Right.
Our God wants us to love him with all of our being, including all of our mind. Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. St. Paul wrote to the Romans, be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Yeah.
So the church has always been very interested in every aspect of human life and activity, including the intellectual.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about like the things we know by science, there's a lot of things in science that we actually don't know yet.
Right.
But that doesn't make them not real. Or,
Right.
you know,
Right.
So to me, it's that kind of same dichotomy is like you have these things in our faith that you can't reason your way to. You probably can. Maybe someday we'll know,
Right.
we'll understand those things. But here on this earth, we can't.
Right. And so there's a similarity here. So especially between science and faith. Well, just think more broadly. So much of what we learn growing up as kids in elementary school, junior high, middle school, junior high, high school, college, we accept as true because we trust our teacher.
Right.
Like
At this point, they could tell us anything, and we'd be like, okay.
Right, well, but if you think about it,
degree.
and it has to be that way.
Right.
Like I do not have the capacity to verify with my own reason, by my own investigation, each and everything that I learned growing up.
Right.
It's the cumulative knowledge, and frankly, our teachers. Like it's the same thing. They received it from their teachers when they were in college, and their ongoing education. So the idea that even the things that are provable by reason alone, most of us know that they're true, not because we've actually reasoned them all out, but because we trust the person who revealed them
did it
to
before.
us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've never seen Pluto. I can't see Pluto with my naked eye, but I trust that Pluto is there.
Someone says it's there, so.
And there's good reason for
Right.
that. They're trustworthy. The same thing is true. There are trustworthy reasons to accept what God has revealed to us. And that's not, we're not going to go too far down that road, but
Right.
in both cases, we accept things as true because somebody has revealed them to us.
Right.
So especially, I just want to spend the 5 minutes or so we have left talking about science in particular.
Yeah.
And the reason because again, there's so many misperceptions, and well, to be honest, again, in some cases there might be some religious groups, there might be some Christian traditions that do hold positions that are contrary to what we know as a matter of fact. That science has explained or uncovered. Right. There are a lot of, as you said already, I mean, there are a lot of sometimes scientific theories and hypotheses that in the end aren't actually true.
Right. They're called hypotheses for a reason.
Exactly.
They're working with them. Correct.
But there are certainly things that there's a high degree of
Right.
confidence
Right.
in their the truth of the theory. So hypothesis versus theory. I mean, there's a high degree. So far, the empirical testing investigation has verified this hypothesis as likely to be true. So many people think that there's a contradiction between Christianity and science, or Catholicism and science. But again, speaking at least for Catholicism, again, there's none at all. In fact, so many scientists have been Christian or even Catholic throughout the centuries.
And made huge discoveries or that seemingly might be against religion.
But in fact, they're only apparently
Right.
so. They're not actually so. Louis Pasteur, the pasteurization process. That's why our milk can
Stay in our fridge.
Stay in the fridge. Stay on the shelf if you go to some places.
Right.
He was a faithful Catholic.
The scientist who has the theory of the Big Bang. I can't remember his name, but we had it in the we have it in the Bishop's
Belgian
Bulletin.
priest. Gregor Mendel was the inventor of the modern theory of genetics.
Right.
He was an Augustinian monk. Most of the early astronomers were Jesuit priests.
Right.
Right now, there is a Vatican observatory, like an astronomical observatory. In fact, just before we recorded, I saw they have a new website and podcast talking about the compatibility between science and Catholicism. There's a society of Catholic scientists.
Who are not trying to prove all science wrong.
Exactly. We embrace truth wherever we find it. We're sort of like the Borg that way.
Yeah. But
we assimilate it all.
Yeah. Even sometimes if that science seems to contradict something in the Bible,
right?
You just keep working it. And eventually, tell me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is...
I'm always happy to tell you when you're wrong, Renae. You probably are.
Is eventually, it will, like, they'll understand how those two meet together.
Right. And by working it, you mean... Like we're going to fiddle?
The problem. Like,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Bill looked it up. Alexis Carroll.
See?
Thank you, William Seeley, Esquire, or something, just to make it sound even better.
We're boring him so much, he's looking up stuff.
Dr. Alexis Carroll was the Nobel laureate in medicine who saw this miracle and converted.
But seriously, yes. I mean, if a scientific theory like evolution seems to contradict the
Bible,
the Bible, they just keep working it,
So by working it, I mean understanding.
Together. Yes.
And we're not like trying to fiddle explain away. No, so just to take that example, the Catholic Church has always said that what Genesis tells us in the first chapters about the creation of the universe it's true, but it's told in a way that it's conveying truth. It's not meant to be taken as what we would consider to be a literal sense.
Right.
So God created everything out of nothing. That there's an order to the universe, to creation, that humanity, that man and woman created deliberately by God as the pinnacle of material creation. Those are the truths that we hold to. And if you look at the structure, the first 3 days of creation sort of create the habitats. The sky, the sea, land, and so on. And then the space. The next 3 then, days 1 through 3 do that. Days 4, 5, and 6 fill those habitats, the stars, creatures, etc., and ultimately humanity. And then on the 7th day, sort of the capstone, God rested. So that's just a little, very brief thing. All sorts of resources out there. St. John Paul II wrote an encyclical on the compatibility between faith and reason. In fact, episodes 386 and 387 of Ignition, Cameo Anders and I talked about that encyclical, Fides et Ratio, Faith and Reason. Peter Kraft is a philosopher who's done a ton on this. I mentioned the Society of Catholic Scientists. So there's all sorts of resources out there, Catholic Answers Live, great resources to help people understand there, in fact, is no contradiction between Catholicism and faith or reason in general, science in particular, but they're very compatible. Thanks, Renae, for being here today.
You bet.
And that will wrap up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us ignition@sfcatholic.org with any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. And until next time, may God bless you.